And we're back. Welcome back to Open Your Eyes, and we're moving now into our first segment for the morning. And this one is all about the Ministry of Rural Transformation as they provide to us their update on achievements and plans for the ministry. In with us, we have the Minister himself, Minister of Rural Transformation, Community Development, Labor and Local Government, the Honorable Oscar Requena.
Good morning.
Good morning to you,
Belize.
sir. And of course, he is being flanked by his CEO, Valentino Shal, CEO in the Ministry of Rural Transformation, et al. Good morning and welcome to both of you.
Good morning and thank you very much.
Primarily, where I'd like to start with this, my thing is always about the buy-in, so people understand what a ministry does or how it works. That's exactly where I'd like to start. When we talk about the Ministry of Local Government, Rural Transformation, what's the job there? How does this ministry work?
Well, first of all, good morning again and thank you for the opportunity. Certainly, as you know, coming out of the general elections on November the 11th last year, the Prime Minister, appointed myself as the minister responsible for rural transformation, community development, local government, and labor. It's a very big mandate, really, when you think about particularly rural transformation, community development, it certainly involves, working with communities, rural communities across this country. The emphasis is on rural development.
Yes.
And certainly when you look at, local government, we have responsibility for, all the municipalities, all the towns and cities across the country. And then when you look at labor, we have to work with, our tripartite partners, government, the business sector, our unions, our trade unions. So it's certainly a very big mandate, but we are up to the task. We are very happy that we have completed 1 year. And I must say that, we feel very proud of our achievements. We are working hard and we will continue to work hard to ensure that we deliver on Plan Belize to Belizeans across this country.
Exactly. See, so, and I'm glad that you said that. I'm glad that you said that because I also wanted to go to what was it like, especially within your first year of trying to transform and, of course, deliver on what you had promised to the people?
Well, I can say to you that it's been a very rewarding experience, a lot of hard work, I must say. When we came over to the ministry, we found the ministry we found the staff that to a great extent, were, demoralized. To a great extent, people were not really, working very hard. They did not have that energy, and I think a lot of it had to do with the leadership of the ministry, and certainly when myself and CO came on board, one of the first things that we did was to meet with our staff and certainly, to share with them our vision, our goals, our objectives, and certainly to chart a way forward. We certainly had to, come up with strategies how we are going to achieve our goals that we had set out. And very importantly in this process was really to make our staff understand that they are a part of this process. So we found a way to motivate our staff, to get them engaged. Because certainly I can say to you, we happen to lead the ministry, but we have, a very good staff, technical persons with great experience, who are willing to work. But I think what was lacking was really, that motivation, that leadership, and to a great extent, the oversight to ensure that what the ministry was charged with was being done on a daily basis. So to answer your question, what has it been like? It's been very rewarding. I wake up every day. I look forward to going to work. I have great energy. I want to see something positive done for our country, and that's the spirit we take. I must say that I'm very thankful and grateful that I have a great CEO. I have a great team, we have our management team. Everybody is fully energized. We share one common vision of moving the ministry and delivering to the people across the country.
And I'm glad for that insight. I question sometimes, having sat in opposition for as long as you have, and being someone from a rural community, you have seen needs for all the time that you have not been able to act upon making decisions. How much do you think that played a role in what was a quickness where your ministry hit the ground running in being able to execute projects?
Well, first of all, I must say that I come from a rural background. I grew up in a village in San Pedro, Colombia. I went to school in San Pedro, Colombia, and all my life, my career is as an educator, and I spent, over 25 years working in the rural communities. Thereafter, I got into politics, and thankfully to the people of Toledo West who gave me an opportunity. I was elected. I spent 8 years in opposition. And certainly, I know firsthand, and I understand, very well, the needs of our people in the rural areas. So certainly, having spent 8 years in opposition prepared me, in having a better understanding, but also, developing, strategies, policies, strategies in how we are going to move forward, whenever I got an opportunity. And thankfully, here we are at the Ministry of Rural Development. And I must say that in 1 year, I'm very proud to say that we have completed our strategic plan for the ministry. Wow. Very important. When we went to the ministry, there wasn't any strategic plan. That is significant because that really creates the roadmap in how we are going to move forward for the next 4 years. Very significant for us.
And that's, CU, I want to hear from you with that. It seems that what part of your action plan, your immediate action plan, was to focus internally so that you could get the team moving in the right direction. Let's talk about that process.
Sure. I wanted to say, the question was what was the process like to come into the ministry and take over, and what is our mandate as a ministry?
Yeah.
And we simplify it for our staff. Is we're here to serve the people, and our objective or our common goal is to make life better for Belizeans. Whether we're dealing with labor and the private sector, whether we're dealing with local government and municipalities, whether we're dealing with rural development and villages and rural areas, everything must tend towards improving the lives of Belizeans. That's it. And the process of doing the strategic plan, as the minister mentioned, yes, we do have a plan. Now we have a roadmap. But the process of inclusion, the participation of the staff, and we included everybody in the process. And so that gave them a chance to share some of the ideas that they had that they were never had the opportunity to contribute to what direction the ministry should take. And that alone, so the product of having the plan, a written plan, is important, but the process of having people feel that their voice is important, empowering them to be able to contribute to the entire ministry is also an extremely important exercise. And so when you have people participating in that way, feeling included in that way, they begin to own the mission of the ministry. And I think that that's what we have done. And also, Marlene, you asked about how did we hit the ground running. And I think I have a very similar background as the minister. I am from the Toledo district. I am from a rural community. And I have spent my entire life coming up from deprived environment, low socioeconomic environment. And I can see, and I have lived it, I've experienced it. So as soon as I got the opportunity to do something, I did it. And we did it. And that's kind of what it is. And so we took over the ministry. And, what do the people need? They need clean water. They need better roads. The farmers need support. We need to improve and strengthen the governance of our communities and our towns and so forth. We need to ensure that the labor environment in the country is conducive for economic growth. So we took it on and we did it. And so that's kind of the whole approach, is that if you know that you can improve the life of someone by your action and by your decision, and you are given that opportunity to do so, then you must do that with immediate urgency. And so that's what we did. And I think just the drive itself that we bring, both as individuals, but also from the mission-oriented approach that we take, has also inspired the staff to jump on board and say, okay, I think we're going to get somewhere now. And that has made a significant difference for us.
Very often when we have you on, we are unable to cover everything in
yeah.
your portfolio
Indeed.
because
Sure.
it is so big.
Yes.
But I do want to try to get in some of the highlights as much as possible. And we can start, for me, I think, with rural development.
Sure.
This is I think, as CEO pointed out, when you look at some of the basic needs, one of the things very often, and we're city-based, so we're probably guilty as well, but we forget that is it half or over half of this country reside in rural communities?
Over half.
Over half
Wow.
of this country.
Yes.
And so that's the level of persons who require to have access to things that people in urban areas take for granted.
Exactly.
Let's talk about how you took that approach, because when the need is so great, prioritizing who gets access first
Sure.
can be a challenge.
Right. Well, I'm glad you raised that, Marlene, and certainly, yes, we have well over 55% of our population is rural-based. And I want to say to you, CEO said it very clearly. Our mission was really to make life better for our people, with a focus, with an emphasis on the rural area. Over the years, the rural areas have been abandoned and neglected. And, a lot of times, my colleagues, don't understand, why I have that passion, why I have that drive to fight for the rural area. But I understand it fully well because we live it out there. And I'll give you a perfect example. We take for granted, just get up in the morning, you get in your car, you drive, you go to your office. I want to look at the experience in Machakilha. When we got into government, the first thing that we did was to visit Machakilha. We had myself and CEO and our team went there. We met with the leaders, and the leaders impressed upon us, gentlemen, ladies, we need our road. This is very important.
Yeah.
Students are getting up in the morning at 3:30.
Yeah.
They have to walk for 2 hours in mud and water to catch a bus in Dolores. Then they go to school. Then they return back in the evening. They're not getting home until 7 o'clock in the night. Now, having a road is going to make a significant difference to improve the lives of our people. And that is why we have placed emphasis on ensuring that, that is a priority. Completing that road. I'm happy to say that we are only 3/4 of a mile away from completing it. The material has already been, excavated. It's ready. It's just the weather that was holding us back. We are going to complete that road for those people. Water. People get up in their homes, they turn on the faucet, they can get water. People in these rural communities, sometimes they have to walk, miles. They spend a lot of time, a lot of productive time that can be used otherwise, studying or engaging in other productive activities. They have to be worrying about going to fetch water. A lot of times water that is not healthy, that is not clean. So our emphasis is really, if we have, for instance, in Toledo West right now, we have 5 communities that still do not have water. We are working diligently. That becomes a priority.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, really, it's about helping people to live, a decent life,
Yes.
helping our people to be able to live healthy, helping our people to be able to have access to educational opportunities. Because when you meet the basic needs of children, when you meet the basic needs of their parents, they have more time and more energy to be able to to focus on other important things, such as education, such as working to establish productive activities so that they can generate an income to improve the lives of their families.
But let's talk about because a lot of people might still say, but it's taking some time. Talk about the difficulties of having to push a road from point A to point B, having to get water in these areas.
Right.
Is it a difficult process?
It's a very difficult process. To start off with, we all know the economic condition in which the last government left, our country. Very, very difficult. I mean, we were borrowing $1 million a day. We all know that was not sustainable. So it became a very difficult challenge. Well, one of the things that we did is, with the little resources that we were able to get to our ministry from the Ministry of Finance, we created a roadmap and we said, here, we have 10 things that we need to get done. But out of the 10, we have 3 that are priority, and we are going to focus on those things. That is the kind of activity, that is the kind of planning that we did at our ministry. And that is why today I'm happy to say that with the limited resources, if you look at social media, because a lot of time we promote the work that we do on social media, we have impacted, the lives of people across this country in the rural areas. In all the districts, we are drilling wells, for example, for farmers who never had an opportunity to be able to have water because they're engaged in vegetable production. They have, cattle, and other agricultural activities. They never had water. They are now getting access to water. Many of the communities where the water systems were not functioning, we have restored back those systems, and people are having access to safe, clean, potable water. Farmers, in the Toledo district, we had farmers' roads that were abandoned for the last 15 years. In the first year, we have opened up these farmers' roads. We are now moving where we are, rocking these roads so that farmers can get to their farms. Why is that important? Because we believe that we must create an opportunity for our people to be able to help themselves. We have to move away from this dependency syndrome. A lot of times, somehow, a culture has been created that people are waiting, for something to be given to them. I'm always reminded by a teacher in Laguna, Mr. Samuelak, and I'm going to call his name. He often says, the pantry is at the farm. So all the people want is their road to be fixed so that they can go and work, produce, feed their families, and sell the extra to be able to generate an income. That's the kind of, environment that we want to create. That's the kind of environment that we want to promote. Productivity, self-reliance, and really a culture of where people can say, I can take the lead in making, life better for my family and for my country.
Yeah, if I can underscore, you see, when we say the rural areas were neglected, that's precisely what we mean. How can you have a government for the last 13 years not see these needs out there in the rural sector where more than half of our people live, man? How can that be? And not only that, they had money to do something about these things and never did it. All these farmers' roads where people go and produce could have been fixed a long time ago. These water systems that have broken down, abandoned, people drinking, or I don't know, I hope they weren't drinking, but some people I'm sure do, these brackish water that is untreated, unfiltered. Right now we still have communities drinking raw water from the river.
Yes.
So when we say neglect, and also the management of these systems, and then the running of the villages through the village councils, reports not being produced, no plans, no implementation, no energy, no drive, and yet you have half of your population under this type of lethargic condition. That how can you talk about development if that is the condition in which you have your people living? And so that is what we are trying to transform. And so when we went to San Vicente the last time, the alcalde and the chairman said, we produce a lot of things here, a lot. We have cattle, we have cacao, we have beans, we have corn, we have cardamom, we have pepitos. But we have to carry these things on our backs to bring it to the village where there's a road, and then we take it over to Guatemala to sell. That need was there, and we were in Sundaywood. The chairman was telling us, I asked him, how do you bring out the rice that you are starting to produce again? He said, well, I put 2 on the horse and 1 on my back in order to bring 3 bags. And when I bring 3 bags at a time, and then I go back and I come back and I go back until I complete the 60 bags that I need to take out. How is it that we are doing that? So we are going to build a farmer's road for these people so that they don't have to do that anymore. And their production can be more efficient, and that they can help themselves. And that's what people are willing to work. But that's what you need a government for, that to support the people in their own endeavors. And that's what this is about.
And you're talking, and I can reflect back, especially the education portion, where we have documented, where we've documented what teachers go through, what children go through to just get access to basic education. And I always see it as, it's like everybody else gets to start at mile 5 and mile 10, and we start at and they start at mile 0. But before we stay on that point, we all have a close connection with the South, a deep love for the South. But I'm sure people watching are saying, What about the other villages, Minister Requena? You're from Toledo West, so you're focusing there. So how widespread are these actions?
Let me clarify that. No,
Yeah.
that's why I think I said earlier
Yeah.
that whilst I come from the south, we try to be very fair, and what we try to do is to ensure that whatever resources we have, that we distribute them in a very equitable manner.
Okay.
And that's why we said if you were looking at the images, we were working last 2 weeks. We were working in Orange Walk, where we drilled over 13 wells for farmers.
18 wells.
18 wells. Now, that is significant. That is significant. Now, not only in Orange Walk, we have been in the Cayo district, in the Belize district, in the Stan Creek district, in Toledo. So we make sure that we serve everybody. That is our mission.
Yeah.
And, I always, I have a CEO who, is always on the ball and ensures that, we provide equal opportunities for everybody across this country.
No, that's a very important point, because the first thing we did when we came is we went to Sartaneja, for instance. Sartaneja is a large village, and their system had been done for 2 years before we got there. And nobody came to see them. Nobody bothered to help them fix their system. And so we have fixed that system, for instance. And
Up and running.
it's up and running. The water filtration system, the reverse osmosis system is back on track. The people are getting clean, healthy water you can drink right off the top, and you're good. But 2 years before that system was done. Nobody bothered to fix it. And so that's what we did. And so you go across the country, and that's what we continue to do.
I'll give you an example. See, we had Shunush,
Yes.
for example, that was abandoned. You know that Shunush, they invested over $1 million in a reverse osmosis system. That was right before the general elections of 2008. My understanding is that about 6 months to a year after the election, that system collapsed. Can you believe that 12 years went by in which the last government was, running this country? And they did not lift a finger to help those people. Right now, we went there, we had to do some emergency work to restore back water so that the people could have water. And we have a project right now that is online. We are waiting for that, to be able to, give a complete overhaul to that system in Shunush. But that is only one example of many other systems across this country that, we have been able, to get up and running that were abandoned.
I've got to
So
say,
let's. I just want to ask as we move. What would you say is the accomplishment? Because I want to get into especially labor and local government.
Sure.
Yes.
What would you say is the accomplishment that you are most proud of having implemented in the past year?
so far.
I am going to say to you that our greatest accomplishment in rural development is just being able to provide safe, clean, potable water to our people in the rural areas. To be able to create opportunities for people to be more productive.
Yeah.
Also our ability to be able to, get a lot of our farmers' roads that were abandoned, up and running again. We have also, with the support from the Ministry of, Infrastructure, Development and Housing, we have been able to upgrade, for example, the streets in San Pedro, Colombia, and we are moving on to other communities. So these are some of the greatest accomplishments. But I would also say, just as CEO said, our ability to bring our staff together, to re-energize our staff, our ability to get them engaged, to get them to understand and appreciate their role in the development of this country. I think that's a very great accomplishment.
So I've got to throw this out. Your ministry is one of those that must be connected to nearly all the ministries, because when it comes to your ministry, it has a lot to do with education and educating the children in that particular area. The same with tourism. But I want to go to education, because more than half of our population lives in rural areas. We're in a pandemic. Not everybody has access to internet or access to electricity, but the children must be able to learn. What's your level of alertness at this particular point, or even a level of worrisome at this particular point that some of them might be left behind?
Go ahead, CEO.
This is. I was coming to that because we're talking about roads and water, but there are still, especially in the south, villages without electricity. I think we have at least 26 of them. And as the minister was talking earlier, we take for granted that we can put on a light switch and turn on the water tap, and it's good. we were just down south last weekend, like a couple days ago, and we were talking to young people there, and like, joking with them, like, how do you call your girlfriend? So like, well, I can't because there's no internet, there's no telephone communication, there's no electricity, right? And so we are working on a current plan together with the Department of Energy on an electrification, a national rural electrification program for communities that still do not. We still have at least 2 or 3 in the Orange Walk district, and the rest are in Toledo. And so we have mapped them out. We have visited all of them, every single one of them, including San Benito Poite, that is so far off. And so together with the Department of Energy and the support of the European Union, we now have a plan, and we're going to begin to electrify these villages.
Using renewable energy.
Using renewable energy. And so we're setting up these microgrids that runs just like the BEL lines, looks and feels the same way, except the source is the sun, right? And so we are also in communication with the telecommunications company, both BTL and Smart. They are waiting for power to come into the area, and then which will enable them to set up their towers and their cell sites, and we will be able then to bring communication as well as the internet, especially for education. Because in rural areas where people don't have easy access to these things, the children, in terms of their education, are being left behind. And so this is something that we are also concerned about. And you were asking about our accomplishments too, and one of it is the reorientation of what the Ministry of Rural Transformation or Rural Development is about. In the past, they have focused entirely just on water. But rural development is development in its broadest sense. It's about education, it's about utilities and
Access to health.
Access to health and infrastructure and roads and agricultural development, ecotourism, and all of these things that promote the life and well-being of people in these sectors. So this is what we are now doing. And I have been talking to the United Nations Development Program about redesigning a national rural development strategy for us to be able to do these things. So there are, I mean, you were asking, how did the first year go? I didn't feel how the first year went because we are so busy every day. It just went like 12 hours in a clock or 24 hours in a day. 1, 2, 3, and it's the whole year gone already. But there's more, and we are going to keep at it relentlessly until we are unable to do so any further.
But I just wanted to go back to the point on education because, and you said it right, that, as a ministry, we have to collaborate and work with other ministries, and precisely that is what we do. We have a very good working relationship with the other ministries, with my cabinet colleagues. I'm particularly grateful to Minister Francis Fonseca for his great support, in education. He has always had a passion and a love for education, and he has been very consistent with his support, to us in the area of education. And as CEO said, currently we are working along with the Ministry of Education on a plan, with the service providers, BTL and Smart, to roll out. In fact, we already have, some of the schools in the rural areas that are benefiting from, internet services. But we want to ensure that we can expand that, to be able to reach out to everybody. And currently there's a program that they are working on to be able to ensure that students can have access. As you know, right now, we are faced with this pandemic. We are also in the transition process in trying to get back our students back into school, because we can all agree that our students have lost significantly over the last almost 2 years. So there's a great amount of work that has to be done to try to help our students to be able to get back. But that is at the forefront of our agenda, to ensure that we can provide support to our students to get back to school and provide great opportunities for them in the rural areas, as CEO said, in relation to telecommunication and electricity.
Well, you know, using that point of technology to jump off, I think it's a great transition into one other area of your portfolio with labor. And we've had the labor department with us quite a bit to be able to talk about some of the upgrades there.
Yes, you will.
And let's talk about how significant this is.
Well, the labor department provides services. A lot of it is labor advice to the general public.
Okay.
That's one aspect, and I think that one of the first things we noticed when we took over is that there was a poor allocation and deployment of the staff. We had 5 here and 1 here and none here, and it was just messy. So we streamlined that. So we put officers where they should be, senior officers where they need to be. Belize City is, of course, a huge area. There was no labor officer in San Pedro, which is a huge commercial area. There was no officer in the free zone, when it's a huge, we have over 200 businesses there. And of course, workers have questions. You know, they want to ensure that they're treated fairly.
Indeed.
So that's the first thing we did is kind of mapped out, you know, where the needs are and how our staff are deployed, and then we reorganized it and said, okay, we need to send people here and we need to send people there. And so we kind of did that throughout the entire country.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing we did. And then after that, we began to see, you know, what are the issues that the labor department is dealing with. A lot of the important standing committees were not in place. The Labor Advisory Board, the tripartite body that looks after the registration of employers, organizations, and trade unions, the Labor Complaints Tribunal, which will hear complaints from workers, you know, against their employers. Those were not there, and so we had to redo all of those standing bodies as well. All fully appointed, all fully in place. The Labor Tribunal has now its set of procedures in place. It's like it's a quasi judicial body that you know, if you have a complaint against an employer, you take it to the body and they will hear the case and rule whether in favor or against. And so that is now up and running, for instance. So you know, those things we've also done. But we've also been working with the unions themselves and the employers to work out their collective bargaining agreements.
Yep.
We've overseen quite a few of them already. We were able to support the Port of Belize and the Christian Workers Union in getting a collective bargaining agreement for their administrative staff.
Yeah.
We're currently overseeing a discussion between the port and the CWU on the stevedores matter. That one is a little bit more difficult, but again.
But you are involved.
We are definitely involved. We're most
You know,
certainly.
you've heard allegations otherwise that the labor hasn't, the ministry hasn't been as involved as they should be.
Yes, I mean, we see the reports in the media, but we know what we're doing, right? We don't come out and counter everything that comes out in the media. We are involved. We're fully involved. We're using all the apparatus available under the Labor Act to try to deal with that matter. And so that one is a little bit more difficult, but it is in the interest of the employer, it is in the interest of workers, it is in the interest of the country that matter is dealt with. And so we're doing everything we can to try to get to some resolution on that matter. So the talks are ongoing, and hopefully we will keep at it until we can come out of the
So there were 3 CBAs signed.
Yes.
There was one with I think the energy workers.
Energy
Union.
workers,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
You know,
I also wanted to say, if you allow me, Marlene, to also say that one of our other achievements at the Ministry of Labor was our temporary employment permit platform that has gone fully online. You know, prior to us coming, you know, over to the ministry, you know, people had to actually go in and physically take in their application forms. We have now, you know, digitized that entire process.
Okay.
You know, and we have reduced the time. You know, prior, I think we were looking at about 21 days for people to be able to, you know,
months in some instances.
You know, so in some instances, months to have their temporary employment permits processed. We have now reduced that to 7 days.
Wow.
You know, and it's fully, you know, electronic, with the exception of payment, where, you know, people have to still physically go in and pay. But we are working on that. CEO is working very diligently to ensure that the entire process becomes digitized.
Okay.
So that is significant for us.
And you also have your employment services where people can look for jobs.
Absolutely.
And
I also
post
wanted
jobs.
to share that. Yes,
Yeah.
our employment services, platform where, employers can upload, what jobs, what positions, skills they're looking
available.
for.
Yeah.
Where we have, potential employees also uploading, what qualification and skills they also have. And we're looking at a process where they can, match
Yeah.
and, be able to, become gainfully employed.
Yeah, and we're looking at improving it. We have deployed it for almost a year now, and there are plenty of room for improvement, and so we're going to revise that.
And people are matching on with jobs on the site?
Yes, but it's still done. There's some manual aspects to
Okay.
it, and I think we want to get rid of that part so that it's automatic.
I think it's also important to say that when it comes to labor complaints, in the past, labor complaints would be, lodged at our ministry, and it would take months and years for resolution.
Yeah.
We have seen now where that process has now been, expedited, where people, come in, they make their complaints, and they are being dealt with,
Yeah.
as we speak.
Yes, and it's interesting. I don't really have the numbers right now, but thousands of dollars have been paid over to workers as a consequence of the intervention of labor officers.
Wow.
And so every month I get a report, and I see 5,000 was paid here, 15,000 was paid here, 20,000 was paid this month over. And so, the people have legitimate complaints.
Yeah.
And they need someone to mediate that and look after that.
Yeah.
And sometimes the disputes between employer and employee is simply a misunderstanding. And so our labor officers are mediating these things. And these are not easy matters to deal with, but they mediate them.
Well, there's
and they
a
get
lack of
resolution.
knowledge and understanding of what governs, of how we're governed, especially with the Labor Act. And I think that's something, we're talking about the last year, but moving forward. I can't let you
Can I-
leave.
On the Labor Act, though, I think
That's
that
what I
this
wanna
is
get
very, very
into. Thank
important
you.
because
Before you kick us out,
Poked quite a few bears there, right? Yeah?
the complaints management system
Yes.
is also something we're digitizing.
Yeah.
Where right now you come in as a worker or as an employer, you make a complaint or you ask for some grievance to be addressed. It's written down, and sometimes the papers are lost. It's lost. We are going to digitize that process. As a matter of fact, we have already begun the process to do that, so that everything is logged. Which day you came in, which office you visited, which officer met with you, what your complaint was.
So there's tracking.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's complete tracking.
Yeah.
And so if there's an officer goes on leave or gets sick, another officer can pick it up
Yeah.
right where it left off. You can also know where your case is in the process. And so, and on top of that, you will not have to come to the office to make your complaint. You can just be in your village, because some people work, like, let's say you live in San Hill, but you work in San Pedro.
Yeah.
Sometimes you come home and you feel like you weren't paid what you were due.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have to go back to San Pedro
To make that complaint.
to make that complaint, or you don't have to come to Belize City. You sit in your home, make your complaint, and you will get a response.
Yeah.
And so that process is being completely digitized.
Let's talk about the upgrade of the labor laws.
Right.
I know this is a huge task to undertake.
certainly, and I am happy that you raised that, Marlene, because just last week,
Yes.
I took to cabinet, a cabinet paper in which we sought, approval from cabinet for the Labor Act to be, completely revised.
Okay.
And that is significant for us.
When was the
because-
last revision?
Well, the last revision, there were
Overhaul.
revisions that were done in 2011. But when we look at how the way the revisions were done, they were done in a very ad hoc manner. And that is why we at the Ministry of Labor felt, together with our technical team, that it, and certainly not only us at the Labor Department, but employees, the business community, everybody saying, it is time for us to have a comprehensive review of the Labor Act. And that is why, that mandate has now been given by Cabinet. And, we are well on our way in
What's the
setting up.
timeline?
The timeline, we are looking at 1 year.
Okay.
We're looking at 1 year to have a complete, overhaul of the Labor Act.
Okay.
And of course, that involves, a very major process.
Okay.
Because, we will have to engage all our stakeholders,
Right.
throughout this process of reform.
Now, Minister, also in the last cabinet brief, we heard about the move towards the $5 minimum wage, a huge point in the campaign for your administration.
Yes.
Part of what you were championing.
Yes.
Many are very skeptical it's possible.
Yes.
I say, how do you make $5 out of 15 cents?
Yeah.
Again, I'm going to ask you to speak to that, because just yesterday, he was engaged, in several meetings to kickstart this process. Allow me to just say that, yes, at Tuesday's cabinet meeting, again, we were given, the mandate, as the Ministry of Labor, to put in place, the mechanism to get this going, because this was a campaign promise that we made to our people on the Plan Belize, and we are going to deliver on it. Okay, CEO?
Yes, the part of the overall process of reviewing the Labor Act, doing the comprehensive review, is that it's part of economic development and economic growth. If you want investors to come in, your laws have to be clear, your laws have to be updated, because labor is a significant portion of industry and the economy. So we need to bring that up to speed. But if I think everybody has noticed the drive of this administration. We are intent on growing the economy. We are, and of course, once we are past this pandemic, the figures are going to keep going. I mean, we grew 15% this last quarter. That's significant. And we have to keep growing, because our population is also growing. And so the drive that the government has, we are confident that we will improve the lives of these Belizeans. We will build a prosperous country. And when the wealth is generated, it must be distributed both to the entrepreneur and the investor and the worker. So, but in addition to that, we have the loss of buying power has been significant over the years.
Yeah.
So while the minimum wage is $3.30, 10 years ago, it's not really $3.30 if you factor in inflation.
Yeah.
Right? And so all you're doing really is bringing everything back up to speed. And so it's important. But there are also, this is a huge discussion that we're going to have. But, but there are several sectors of the economy already that are paying far above the minimum wage.
Yeah.
They don't even bother with the minimum wage because they want the best worker. And you want the best worker, you provide the best incentive. Right?
Agreed.
So there's a significant portion of the economy where they should be paying the minimum wage, but they're paying more. Simply because they are trying to grow their business, and they want the right people inside their business.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are out of time.
We're out of time.
And I know that we tried to pack it. The portfolio too big, man.
We didn't touch local government.
Local government.
National, international, and regional communications.
That's right.
So there are a lot of things definitely that we hope that upon your next visit we'll be able to discuss.
Well, if you invite us, we come back.
Well, we're thankful, Minister, and of course CEO. Thank you guys so very much for joining us this morning and sharing with us the work that your ministry is doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much as well. And thank you, Belize.
It's always a pleasure.
We're about to take a break. When we come back, though, yes, today is actually World AIDS Day, but there are so many discussions we need to have about that, and of course, how we're dealing with the COVID-19 situation with folks who are actually suffering with that. So we'll talk about that when we